Hello, fabulous scholars. It is time to finish the Franklin or Butler's tale about Dorgan and Avergus and Aurelius. Remember that Dorgan is married to Avergus, but she was worried that he would die if his ship crashed on rocks. And Aurelius, who loves Dorgan but is not married to her, promised that he could make the rocks disappear if Dorgan would marry him. And he did. He went to see magician, not a musician, a magician, and paid him a lot of money. And he made the magician made the water rise and cover the rocks. And so Avergus is home safely, and Dorgan is thrilled. And then Aurelius shows up and tells her, "Oh, you have to keep your promise to love me now." So let's see what happens. "Well, I've done it. Now you must keep your promise." "Done what? Aurelius, are you ill? Your eyes are so bright, they frighten me." The young squire caught her up in his arms. "I love you, lady. I told you as much, though you took no pity on me. Now I've removed every rock from Brittany's shore, and you must return my love forever and ever, as you swore to do." Dorgan gave a shriek, and tearing herself from his grasp, ran to the cliff top. Already a noisy crowd stood shoulder to shoulder along the grassy brink, peering down with woo and ah. She pushed her way through to the front and stared down in horror at the clean, gleaming rim of water that lapped high against the cliff. How? It's unnatural. Why would the gods do this to me? What witchcraft did Aurelius use?" For a moment, Dorgan stood posed on the brink, thinking to throw herself down into the gray-green sea. If she lived, she must surely keep her word to Aurelius or be shamed forever. But if she kept her word, she also would be shamed forever. There was only one thing to do. She would tell Avergus, that's her husband, and let him decide. By this time, her husband had heard the amazing news that the sea had swallowed up every black rock on Brittany's coast, and he too went to the cliff to see for himself. Halfway there, he met his wife, her face soaked with tears. She poured out the whole story of the picnic, of Aurelius's vow of love, of her joke about the rocks. When she had finished, she waited, her head hanging down, to hear what he would say. Avergus put a comforting arm around her shoulder and said, "It won't be so terrible, my dear. Aurelius is handsome after all. I'm sure in time you'll come to care for him, and I shall try to be happy knowing that you are well loved." "You mean I have to go to him?" Avergus bit his lip. "For the time being, we must pretend to go on being married. By every night, you can go by carriage to his house, and in the morning the carriage will bring you back. Only we three will know the truth, that you are his lady now and not mine. I think you should go now and put his mind at rest. After all, a promise is a promise." He kissed her hand and turned back toward the castle. His heart inside him was almost too heavy to carry. Dorgan ran her fingers through her hair. She drank in the sea air as though it were a welcome cup of poison. Then she walked with dignity towards Aurelius's house. Its windows were being boarded up. Its furniture and contents were being auctioned in the garden. Through the crowds of dealers, agents, and curious onlookers, Dorgan pressed through to the house. She did not stop to wonder why Aurelius was selling everything he owned. "Dorgan, what are you doing here?" Aurelius stepped out of the shadow of a wall and took her arm. "I have come to keep the promise I made on May Day last." Aurelius caught his breath. He had expected pleas and arguments, but here was Dorgan keeping her word without a murmur of complaint. He loved her all the more for it, but his love was of a gentler sort. "I discussed the matter with my husband," she said, "and he agreed that there is no other way. A promise is a promise." "You told Avergus?" "Of course." And he agreed? Of course, a promise is a promise. And he is an honorable knight. Scholars, right? What we learned about chivalry. Sometimes being honorable or being brave meant more than being prudent, right? They stood and stared at each other. Dorigen flushed with crying, Aurelius flushed with embarrassment. He loved her all the more for her honor, but his love was more humble than before. You put me to shame, the two of you, he said at last. I cannot come between such a noble husband and his wife. Please tell Avergus that I would rather die of love than see love die between you. I release you from your promise. So Dorigen ran all the way home and flung herself like a sheaf of flowers into her husband's outstretched arms. Their happiness was unmatched and unending, and nothing nor no one ever came between them again. As for Aurelius, he turned his attention to raising the 1,000 pounds. Everything would have to be sold to do it. But never for 1 minute did he think of withholding the money from the magician of Orleans. After all, a bargain is a bargain. But one thing was troubling him. He took all the gold he had and rode to Orleans. Here is half your fee, he said to the young magician. Please, I beg you, give me some time to pay the rest. If I sell the house and all the land, there will be nowhere left for my brother to live. And, well, as for me, I don't care if I have to beg in the streets, but my brother doesn't deserve to suffer because of my foolishness. The conjurer peered at him. And have you won the Lady Dorigen, thanks to my magic? No, never mind that. But the magician was puzzled and wrung the whole story from Aurelius. It was a trick after all, the squire said finally. I didn't deserve to win her by a trick. Then the magician flung back his head and roared with laughter. Oh, my dear friend, I can't profit at the expense of a gentleman like you. I won't take a penny, not 1 penny. It's reward enough to know there are 3 such noble people in the world. Get along home before the auctioneers sell your best horses and your favorite armchair, too. Tell me, friends, said the franklin at the end of his tale, who behaved best, the squire, the magician, Dorigen, or her husband? Oh, the lady, of course, said the plowman in his flat, bluff country accent. She delivered herself into the hands of a rogue, but she didn't try to hide it from her husband. Well, that's 2 good things. Nonsense, said the widow in the hat with a jab of her elbow. As Arnie Guevara said in the story, that Aurelius was a handsome young thing with a fine pair of legs. What's the bad luck in being loved by 2 fine young men? Ah, now, lady, said the knight reprovingly, you know you don't mean that. You, the faithfulest of wives to 5 husbands. A distant look came into the widow's eyes, and she smiled. You're right, yes, I was a good, faithful wife after I married. But before, when I was a girl, well, I broke a few hearts, I can tell you. I've only got to look at that young son of yours, Sir Knight, to remember how sweet those days were. Hey-ho! We all turned to look towards where the squire was crouched over his lute, swaying in time to an impassioned melody. Like a snake conjured by a basket, like from some foreign snake charmer, the innkeeper's pretty daughter crept closer and closer. Their gazes were tied in a love knot. The knight shook his head and sighed. Another fiancé. He'll be up all night now writing love songs. I shan't get a wink of sleep, and by Friday week he won't remember the lassie's name. I hope the lassie knows that, said Harry, who had a daughter of his own and would not like her heart broken. But as if she could read his thoughts, the innkeeper's daughter glanced across the crowded room and winked one bright blue eye. She had met plenty of handsome squires before, passing by on the road to Canterbury. All right, fabulous scholars, come back tomorrow. We will hear another tale. Until then, bye.